week one off than our guy from Fifth Down College Football. It's Mark Schipper. Welcome back, Fred. How are you?
What's going on, Sean? How are you doing? I saw your tweet today about calling the games for ESPN Plus for Monroe, so that's very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. Maybe we'll get a few more people to check them out this year. Hey, listen, before we even kicked off on Saturday, people were calling this the craziest season of all time, and certainly Week 0 lived up to it. I thought most of the games, Mark, would be pretty boring, but we ended up really with great games start to finish, and some games we didn't think were competitive would go down the wire.
Yeah, college football, right? It rarely disappoints. It's why when we go through these seasons and I see people complaining about the schedules every week, I'm always baffled. I wonder, is this the first time you've watched college football? Because even the bad schedule ends up with a bunch of good games. So, yeah, I thought Week 0 was a ton of fun. I was TV all day and I loved it.
Mark Schipper, our guest here in the company. Mark, the closer we got to last Saturday, I was all on Florida State leading up to it. Then a week before, I'm learning more about Georgia Tech, and I really thought they had a chance. My two biggest takeaways were how Georgia Tech was able to push around what was supposed to be one of the best D-lines in college football, supposedly, and how much it seemed like Mike Norvell didn't trust his quarterback. How concerned should Noles fans be the rest of the season about those?
Yeah, I would be concerned just because DJU looked exactly like DJU. And every year it seems like we come back wondering if this is the year DJU breaks through. He's got the physical frame, the arm strength. He's got all the looks of a premier elite quarterback. And then he gets out in the field and he checks down and he misses deep throws and he takes sacks. And it doesn't go like it's supposed to go. So I thought Florida State did not utilize their weaponry as well as they should have on Saturday. And then they also had to deal with Georgia Tech. As you mentioned, Brent Key, their head coach, I'm just a huge fan of the guy. I love it when an offensive line coach gets a chance to be a head coach. I think they bring an interesting attitude to the team. You know, Vince Lombardi was an old offensive line coach, and he had that hard-nosed attitude. And Georgia Tech is starting to take on that image of their head coach. They treated him rough in the trenches, and Florida State was not prepared for it. So Florida State's got a lot of work to do. It's just game one, though. So, you know, I always caution on having too big of a reaction to the first week. Things change as the season goes on, and teams change too.
All right, well, that leads to my next question. It was an incredible performance. Should we consider the Jackets a legit contender now in the ACC?
I don't know about a contender, but they're a tough out. They'll probably upset some people over the course of the year, and it's not going to be an easy Saturday for anybody. When you build your team from the lines up, you're just going to give people trouble because at the point of attack, you're hard to beat, and getting hit by those guys is no fun. So I don't want to get this wrong. That was either the fourth or the fifth straight upset of a ranked ACC team for Georgia Tech. So it's becoming a habit for the Yellow Jackets, and they're not going to be any fun to play.
Yeah, Mark, from what we just saw, first game of the year, Georgia Tech kind of pulls a huge upset. A lot of people have Florida State in the college football playoff this year. I'm curious what we've seen this year coming up, 12-team playoff. We've never seen it before. There's got to be a team, one or two teams, that's going to sneak up and sneak into this playoff as an at-large or a conference champion. I'm curious, what one or two teams might you feel might be able to sneak in there this year?
Yeah, great question. I would probably look to the Big 12. The Big 12 has some very interesting teams. I don't know if Utah sneaks into anything anymore. Utah would be a team I'd look at. Oklahoma State. West Virginia is a really interesting team that might have a chance. That a lot of talk about Missouri out of the SEC. I guess those would be some of the teams right off the top of my head who might sneak in.
Let's turn our attention to Week 1 potential upsets. I've had my eyes on – you never want to play the Dakotas. They're always scary, whether it's in North Dakota or South Dakota. Colorado obviously hosted North Dakota State on Thursday. Oklahoma State taking on the defending champion South Dakota State. It doesn't have to be those games, but, Mark, where do you see the most likely upset this weekend?
Yeah, I love both of those games. I don't think either of them will be an upset. I love the Buffalo versus Bison game. That's a win for the United States right there. I think Colorado's going to be ready to go, though, in that opening week. So because of the way Colorado's retooled, I think they'll beat the Bison. I also think Okie State, South Dakota State as well. Gundy has something like 19 returning starters. They're playing at home, and I just don't think it's a spot for South Dakota State. In terms of an upset, you know what game looks really interesting to me, and it would be a true upset, even if it doesn't sound like it, would be West Virginia knocking off Penn State up in Morgantown. West Virginia's got a better team than people think, and they could catch Penn State flat-footed.
Really good quarterback enough people aren't talking about. We all know Dabo has been slow to change with the times. A lot of people projecting that Saturday they're going to get run out of the building against Georgia. If they get blown out, and maybe, Mark, they finish 8-4, is it time to really start worrying about where the Dabo era is headed? Yeah,
definitely. If they get blown out by Georgia and they finish 8-4, it's you pull the alarms at that point. Something's off in a fundamental way. An approach is going to have to be changed. Everyone talks about Dabo not using the transfer portal. Some say that's cohesiveness within his program and a lot of unity. Others say it's Dabo being stubborn and not being willing to evolve with the game. But if they get blown out by Georgia and have another rough ride, it'll be pretty clear that Dabo is off his prime and that role that Clemson has been on for a long time now has gone off the track. So,
Mark
Schipper, that would be a disaster for Clemson.
Mark Schipper, Fifth Down College Football, is our guest here on the Sports Company. Two coaches going at it in the swamp. Cristobal, Napier in Florida. Going to year 3, I would say those seats awfully warm. I love this rivalry game. I wish we saw Miami versus Florida often. I think it's a huge swing game for both teams to start the year. Which way you going?
Yeah, Super Mario and Billy the Kid. It's a fascinating coaching matchup. I think it'll depend on how the game goes. If it's a real battle and it's a close game, I don't think any harm either way to either coach. If it's a blowout one way or the other, it'll be a big deal. I think Billy Napier's in a much tighter spot than Mario is because Mario's just he's got more equity at Miami than Billy has at Florida. There are a lot of doubters of Billy right from the outset, whereas Mario is just going to be given time to basically ground up, rebuild this thing. So, the line on that, I think Miami's favored by 2.5. I don't know if that'll get bet down. It may. I totally agree with you on this rivalry. I'm looking at the all-time record right now. Miami leads 29-27, and I think what a lot of people don't know is that Florida State didn't really start playing football until the 1950s. And prior to that, the big rivalry in the state of Florida was Miami and Florida. Opposite ends of the state, totally different cultures. And it was a ferocious rivalry. It was really too bad when Spurrier got to Florida in 90 and Florida made the choice because of the SEC schedule to drop Miami, and we lost this rivalry. I wish we played it every year. I wish all three of those big three Florida teams played a round robin every year. That's just, they're great rivalries.
Could agree more. Mark, Notre Dame, night game, Kyle Field against Texas A&M. Notre Dame, this came out today, set to start 3 sophomores and 2 freshmen on that offensive line against Texas A&M. We know Mike Elko's always got good defenses. That atmosphere should be tremendous. Will that young offensive line be able to handle that atmosphere?
Well, we're going to find out, and it's the critical question because we were already talking about this in this conversation. Football is a trenches-up game. That's where national championships, conference championships are won on the offensive and defensive lines. And Notre Dame really has everything else in place. 9 starters back on defense. Their defense should be, if not top 10, right around top 10 nationally. They got a good quarterback from Duke. They got good skill players. And so if they fall short on the offensive line, the crucial position group, that would be a sort of a devastating occurrence for Notre Dame this season because really everything else is in place for them to make a playoff and potentially make a run. So trial by fire at Kyle Field, particularly at night, it's going to be a tough atmosphere. So we're going to see about Notre Dame's offensive line coaching. And Marcus Freeman is a chieftain on the sideline to keep those guys calm and get them to battle for 60 minutes. That's going to be a tough game for Notre Dame.
Finally, over in Vegas on Sunday. This is a matchup Tiger fans have looked forward to since 2003 in that supposedly split national championship. As we've been talking about, Mark, these two teams going into this game with a lot of the same questions about their team. Which team gets the answer they're looking for Sunday night?
Well, offense versus defense here, right, on both sides. And both teams, there's interesting symmetry to me between both these teams on the defensive side. LSU went out and hired away Blake Baker from Missouri. I believe they made him the highest paid assistant coach in the country.
Yes, sir.
USC went across town and hired away D'Anton Lynn from UCLA, and they not only gave him a giant salary, they're paying his living expenses in LA. So when you get that kind of offer, it's difficult to say no to. So two new coordinators and really rebuilt defenses. I mean, both these teams last year gave up both more than 400 yards. LSU something like 28 points a game. USC something like 34 points a game. And both had really, LSU had a magnificent offense. USC had an extremely good offense. And while both offenses, I think, will take a step back this year just because it's too torrid of a pace to keep up what they did last year, I think both offenses are going to be very good. So it's time to find out if this money was a good investment and if they got the talent on the roster to make it happen on the defensive side. So it's a game for me where I'm going in with a lot of questions I need answered about the defensive side for both schools.
Mark, I always enjoy catching up, buddy. We definitely want to make sure we do this again in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, tell our audience how they can keep up with your work online.
Yeah, pop over on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Fifth Down CFB. I'm over there talking college football most days, and I like to chat, so glad to see everybody there.
Always deliver. Thanks, pal. Appreciate you. Enjoy this weekend.
Bye, guys. Appreciate you.